and represents her community, our community, very well federally. She's a critic on behalf of seniors issues. She's open, accessible, compassionate, and honest. Irene's focus as the Member of Parliament has been on putting her constituents and her community first, and I know that living in this community and in the City of London. So please welcome Irene Mathyssen.
Well, thank you very much, Len, and thank you to Patti, Dalton, and the London District Labour Council for this opportunity to honour all of our brothers and sisters who've perished or been injured in preventable workplace tragedy. And I want to say thank you to the folks at the front here, to Judy for offering to run for the New Democrats in London North Centre, to our honoured guest who will talk to us about his experience as a family member who lost a loved one in a workplace tragedy, and to Ras. I've been down to Essex once or twice to help Taras to make sure that he was elected in Essex, and I have to say to you, Taras, that I can hardly wait until there's another New Democrat federally to work with us in Essex and do some of the important work. And I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to all of the Labour community here assembled for your constant efforts to help Londoners understand the importance of today, this day of mourning. Now, on behalf of the New Democratic Caucus, my federal leader Tom Mulcair, we remember our brothers and sisters and stand with all workers in solidarity. We're there. And as has been mentioned every day, 3 working Canadians lose their lives on the job. That's nearly 1,000 a year. And 1 million workplace accidents, injuries rather, happen each and every year. The numbers for young people are even more staggering, and Patti made reference to that. 1 in 7 young workers is injured on the job. And in London, we've seen too many of our sons, daughters, brothers, and sisters killed or maimed in their places of work. These young people are our future, and we have to do better, and we have to demand better. And as members of the Labour community, we know how to make change. That's been referenced here over and over again. And I wanted to give you a sense of some of that change. In 1974, Elliott Lake uranium miners at the Denison mine staged a wildcat strike and picketed to protest unhealthy working conditions. An Ontario Ministry of Health study had been presented at an international symposium in France, and it just so happened that there were 2 union brothers representatives attending that conference, and they learned that Ontario miners' cancer rates were unusually high, unacceptably high. Many had died prematurely from uranium-related cancers because of their exposure to radiation. This was finally revealed at an international symposium. The Ontario workers had no idea of what was happening to them, although the Canadian and the Ontario government both knew about the facts. They simply didn't tell the miners. Because, well, they had a much better relationship with uranium mining companies. These governments had given precedence to industry profits over protecting employees' health and safety, and we all know about that. Now, throughout the 1960s, union pressure had been mounting over miners' occupational health, and in November of 1973, the miners' union, the United Steelworkers, met with Stephen Lewis, the provincial New Democratic Party leader, to talk about the hazards in uranium mining and the Workers' Compensation Board's inadequate response to these sick miners. It also met with Ministers of Health and Natural Resources to talk about the concerns that they had in regard to silicosis and lung cancer. Government agencies were pretty indifferent. It's not so different than today to the union's request for proper medical exams of miners and that there be information for the miners. But the workers persisted, and the wildcat strike led the Ontario government to establish the Royal Commission on Health and Safety of Workers in Mines. And it resulted in the introduction of occupational health and safety legislation that we have in Ontario. That was an important victory, a very important victory. And it was a union between community, between the union and the Ontario NDP. Now, a little later, as we have heard, Bill C-45, the Westray Bill, was introduced in response to what happened in Nova Scotia in 1992 at the mine. A disaster that killed 26 miners in an underground explosion. The mine had only been open for 8 months before the disaster, and the workers who were in the midst of an organizing drive hoped that a union could force the employer to operate a safer mine. So, for more than 12 years, the United Steelworkers fought for changes, testified at the public inquiry held in the mid-1990s, and lobbied government to implement the recommendations from the inquiry. Other unions, individual union members, the Ontario Federation of Labour, Canadian Labour Congress also lobbied hard for the bill, and steelworkers persisted. And because of their tenacity, there were changes to the criminal code, and because of those changes, the government of Nova Scotia had to implement the legislation that we know as the Westray Bill. Now, at the testimony in 1997, the judge, Peter Richards, said in his report, the Westray story is a story of incompetence, of mismanagement, of bureaucratic bungling, of deceit, of ruthlessness, of cover-up, of apathy, of expediency, and of cynical indifference. Now, with the help of Alexa McDonough, we finally saw the passage of the Westray Bill in 2003. And the bill amends the Criminal Code of Canada, and it holds corporations, their directors and executives accountable for their criminal neglect in the workplace. When speaking on behalf of the bill in the Nova Scotia Legislature, NDP MPP Peter Mancini said, accidents, and I think he meant tragedies, can happen as a matter of chance, but when they happen because of a corporation that's determined that the lives of its workers are not a factor in determining the balance sheet, then it's time for us to say that it's a crime. Canadian Labour Congress, the Provincial Labour Federation, and Labour Councils across Canada, and New Democrats, we've all fought hard to bring attention to these issues and the thousands of workers who suffer because of lax safety standards and so-called efficiency that continue to put workers' safety and their lives at risk. When we hear from some who say that unions, and I get these calls, have outlived their usefulness, let's consider how easily the hard-won victories can be lost without a strong and determined labour movement. We know that we've got a government quite willing to roll back the right to refuse federally and introduce bills like C-377 that undermine the strength of the union. We have a lot to do, and we must do it together. Workers' rights are human rights, and in honor of the lives lost and the families affected by death, injury, and illness in the workplace, the New Democrats of this province, of this country, commit to renew our fight for health and safety and better working conditions to ensure that our loved ones return home safely from work. We're very proud to stand with you in solidarity and standing together as servants of the public, as unions, as workers, is the only way that we will achieve what is absolutely essential, and that is justice for workers in this country.